This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Straight to the point, cuz. Everybody in Detroit, probably listening right now, is still butthurt regarding what the hell happened for the Detroit Red Wings. Before we get all pissed off, I know everybody's going to want to stay tuned to this very podcast. Episode 186 might go down in history as one of our greatest and finest performances because when the jock comes in screaming and I'm handling my business, you know it's a good time. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, joining me, and I know I'm just going to give him the floor. My cousin, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
Let me set the stage here. So I walk in the door of the studio, and you're sitting on the phone handling some business. You're dealing with, you're a man of many things. You've got your fingers in all kinds of different situations, and you're handling some important business. I come in, and I can't say what I said to you on air because it's not allowed. It was that distasteful. And that is all in regards to whatever the hell Kenny Holland thinks he's doing by making these trades. You've got a guy like Thomas Vanek, probably your best player on your team this year, and you're going to trade him away for a guy whose nickname is the Undertaker. A guy who is essentially the reincarnation of, I'm not sure if you've seen the movie Goon or not, but it is basically the Stifler character in Goon. A guy who, because he likes to fight a little bit, and he can't score goals, and he's not going to sit there, he's not going to come up, and he's not going to do anything for this team. I sat there, and I was sitting there, and I was trying to buy a little bit of time, trying to reference and just kind of search out who this guy is, this Dylan McElrath. All right, and I just want to give you a little bit of insight as to what you just traded for, Red Wing fans. This is the guy you are going to get. All right, McElrath is a 212-pound, 6'4", right-hand shooting defenseman. According to hockeyfuture.com, which is a great website, check it out. It'll sit there and kind of break down where your guys kind of rank and what you can expect from these guys. And sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss. But this is what you're getting with this guy. His prospect talent score, which is basically the probability that he'll be able to have success in this league and kind of where he ranks according to other rookies and other guys in the minor leagues and how talented they are and what their level of success projects to be in the pros. He's a 6.0. Now, just to draw a little comparison for you, a guy who you just traded away, a guy who you got a fortune for in Brendan Smith. You got a second and you got a third round pick for Brendan Smith, who I think everybody in Detroit, you say, hey, we're going to trade Brendan Smith. You say sold. I don't care. Give me a bag of balls. Give me a thing of pucks. Give me some used towels and give me a broken water bottle that every time I go to put it in my face, it squirts all over the sides of my head. Give me that. I will take all of that for Brendan Smith because I don't want him because he's not good. You traded Brendan Smith and got a second and a third round pick, which was awesome. Absolutely incredible, Ken Holland. And you turn around the very next day and you trade Thomas Vanek for a guy who ranks 6th on the prospect talent score. You just gave away Brendan Smith, who ranks 8th. And everybody knows all of the issues Brendan Smith has. He struggles on the blue line. He's not a great shot. He's a liability out there. And you traded away for a guy who is much, much, much worse than him. And you get a third round pick. Thomas Vanek was supposed to be the guy who gets you something close to a first-round pick. You trade away for Florida's third-round pick, and then you get the condition. The condition on all of this is that if Florida makes the playoffs, and mind you, Florida is one of 3 teams vying for the final wild card spot. If Florida makes the playoffs, that then moves to Phoenix's third-round pick. So you don't even get the condition that if they make the playoffs, you could possibly get a second-round pick. If I was Ken Holland, the last thing I'm accepting is a second-round pick. That's it. Thomas Vanek is putting up points galore this year. It looks like he's having a reincarnation of a younger Thomas Vanek. and you trade him away for essentially a wasted prospect and a third-round pick. You know how many third-round picks this team has going into the 2017 draft? It's unbelievable. Unless you're going to sit there and you're going to find some dope team out there, maybe Phoenix, I don't know, to be able to package all of your third-round picks and maybe move into the second round, I don't want to hear it. You sit there and you pull off a great coup by trading away Brendan Smith for a third-round pick in 2017 and a second-round pick in 2018, and then you come back the following day and you trade away your best player, arguably your best player on this roster, for a guy nicknamed the Undertaker because he likes to fight a lot, and a third-round pick.
See, now, cuz, let's try to be the voice of reason, too. I know I'm pissed off because you had sent me a link, on Tuesday evening saying that, the trade projections that were out there were saying that Vanek could command a lot more than what the Red Wings got. And so when you look at it, everybody, hey, when Brad Galley, Mr. Very Nice Guy, Mr. Kind of, asks questions that are in the nicest way possible, when he comes out and uses the word terrible, people are pissed off. There hasn't been one single person that's messaged us so far that has said, I'm down with this cause. I'm down with this, what the Red Wings were able to do. And everybody's kind of looking at it and going, okay, we were happy that we understood that the Red Wings were selling. They were starting the process of deconstructing this team. But do you think if Ken Holland were to sit down with us and talk to us and be open and honest with us, that he would actually say that that's probably the best deal that I could go out there and get?
I can't believe that. I think he got nervous because there was a ton of time before the trade deadline expired, and basically he traded Thomas Vanek away 2.5 hours ahead of time. What's the purpose? Sit there and wait. And you know what? If you've got to keep Vanek, right, I think all of us would be upset that he kept Vanek. But don't just go give him away. You sat there and you played, you basically played the negotiation game, and you played the who's going to blink first game exceptionally well with Brendan Smith. Exceptional. Well, we're going to see if we can sign him. We're going to see if we can extend him. We really want to keep him. We think he's a great talent, and he's a guy that we want to build around. The Rangers are sitting there on the phone giving you a jingle, and next thing you know, you're like, yeah, all right, yeah, cool. You can take Brendan Smith. We'll take both those picks because that's going to help us out in the long run. Thomas Vanek, it's something totally different the very next day. This is absolutely inane. Absolutely inane. You sit there and you've got the guy who is one of the leading point scorers on your team, and you're only going to sit there and get a third-round pick. Now you take four third-round picks into next year's draft. Outstanding. That's great. You know what? You could have got a second-round pick, which would have helped you out a lot more. Instead, you don't get any of that. I don't get it. Thomas Vanek is leading this team in goals. On top of that, I believe he's second in points on this team behind Henrik Zetterberg. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, he's second in points on this team behind Zetterberg. I just don't get it. What are you doing, Ken Holland?
But now, here's the thing. You got to realize, what did you say and what was your reaction when the Red Wings acquired Vanek? You had concerns, and you kind of poo-pooed what he might have been able to do.
Right. I didn't like it. I didn't like the signing at all because I thought he was on the downside of his career.
Don't you think other general managers maybe are thinking the same things and going, you know what? Is this a flash in the pan? Is Vanek going to be able to recreate this? And you got to remember, he's a free agent at the end of the year. So in essence, he has some leverage in that he could only be viewed as a rental. So why is it that an organization is going to want to give up a whole heck of a lot for a guy that could be only used for 2 or 3 months, known as a rental? So I kind of feel like, as mad as I am, because we start to value our players, we want more. I want more. I'm starting to think that maybe Kenny Holland could only get this, and this might have been the only move that was viable, and to at least give him credit for making a move, because many people were talking and calling for his head, thinking that he couldn't even get this off the ground. So there are some factors that I do believe, as we're sitting here trying to break this move down, making me think that, you know what, maybe this was the only thing that was viable. It's just a shame, because as I'm sitting here, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm not exactly sure. With all these new picks that the Red Wings are going to have in the next couple of years, I'm not exactly confident as we sit today that Ken Holland and his staff are the right team to make those picks. Maybe you blow them out and you start over with a new general manager, new head coach, and you say, okay, this is the group that we're going to, entrust to get these players. But right now, when you look at it, everyone's kind of feeling like Kenny Holland was not able to generate that buzz. Because Just like Donald Trump says, it's the art of the deal. You got to make Florida go, okay, you want him? Now I got to find one more team to get in that mix, drive the price up, at least to get a second-round pick. You don't think there was one more team, one more NHL squad that could have used Thomas Vanek? I don't believe that, though. I'm starting to think that, hey, you're not able to drum up the interest. You're not able to get just a little bit more. I know there's a challenge, but your job is to know the challenge and overcome it. So we're all left here going, damn, we got robbed.
Everything you said, I think you're dead nuts on about why a team could come in and negotiate down the price on Thomas Vanek. That being said, I would negotiate this in the opposite direction, and why I feel you should have at least gotten a second-round pick for him, because his cap hit's not huge. On top of that, Detroit's retaining 50% of his salary.
Still got to pay.
Right, which makes absolutely zero sense. There was one other guy out there who was comparable to Thomas Vanek. He's a little bit cheaper, and he scored more points this year, but he's on a very bad team. And much like Weiss a few years ago, somebody's got to score goals for a bad team, and that's Radim Verbata for Arizona. But you're picking up half of his cost. On top of that, he wasn't expensive as it was. He's scoring goals, and he's an unrestricted free agent, so you could turn around and you could re-sign him if you want to. If you're a team that's going to trade for him, you can sit there and you can work out an extension with him now. You now have exclusive rights to extend him. That's all on you. You can do that before the end of the season because now he's your player. So you get first dibs on him if you want to keep this player around and you want to build off of him. On top of that, he's 2 years younger than Verbata. So you should have got a second-round pick for this, and I'll hold to it no matter what. I understand that when he came into Detroit, I poo-pooed him. I was low on him. I didn't think it was going to work out. It shocked me that he's performed as well as he's performed. He's played exceptionally well here in Detroit. He's come out, he's basically said, I'd like to sign with Detroit I'd like to sign an extension with Detroit if I don't get traded. Best case for Detroit was to trade him, get some pieces, get something in return for him. Instead, what you get in return is you get what appears to be a career minor league hockey prospect in the Undertaker himself, and you get another third-round pick, which I just feel like the value is so low there. And if I'm Ken Holland, I drag my feet right up until the witching hour. You know, you can sit there and you can okay a trade at 2:59 when the trade deadline is 3 o'clock. You can do that, and it's okay. I would sit there and I would have held out forever and found some other team that might have wanted to take him. Maybe Toronto wants him. Maybe it's not Florida who sits there and needs him the most. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe there's another team out there who's sitting there on the outside looking in, trying to get into the playoffs this year. You know, maybe you sit there and maybe you work something out with one of them. I mean, Jesus Pete's, Steve Ott got a 6th-round pick. And look, Steve Ott he's a much different player than Thomas Vanek, right? They're totally different in the way they do things and the way they play. But that being said, you're going to go and you're going to trade your second leading scorer to Florida for essentially nothing. A 3rd-round pick, in the grand scheme of things, what's that going to get you? If you can at least get a 2nd-round pick, you then have visions of grandeur of you being able to sit there and pair 2 2nd-round picks, maybe move back up into the first, get a higher quality, talented player out of the draft. The Islanders are right there with Florida, buying for that final playoff spot along with Toronto. You could have sat there and you could have looked at the Islanders and said, hey, maybe we can work something out. It's all negotiation. Use some leverage, Kenny. Say, hey, I've been on the phone with the Islanders. They're really hot. They're offering me a 2nd and a player. What do you got, Florida? You know, do something. Who cares if it's legit or not? It's all negotiations. It's all negotiations. You got to drive the price up on your guy. And I just feel like Kenny sat on his thumb again.
I know prior to Wednesday and the move made for Vanek, we were starting to maybe turn the tide and think positively about Kenny Holland. Okay, starting the process of making some moves. You moved Ott late in the evening on Tuesday. You moved Yurko. You moved Brendan Smith. Many people thought that, hey, how could you get that much for Brendan Smith? And we were starting to think, okay, this guy's doing some things.
Let me draw a comparison for you. You got a 3rd-round pick for Yurko. Yurko's done nothing in basically a year and a half. Absolutely nothing. He's basically organized the sticks over in Grand Rapids for the Griffins. That's what he's done. You got a 3rd-round pick for that guy. Thomas Vanek, who like I broke down the price last week on the podcast, he's not an expensive player because of where you're at. He's going to get a prorated salary. On top of it, Detroit's picking up 50% of what's left on his contract. And you essentially got the same exact thing for Vanek, your 2nd leading scorer on this team.
So the move for Vanek totally devastates
That's
you.
my mind blown.
You're upset, and it kind of washes away any good notions or good vibes that you had for Kenny Holland. I think it's terrible.
I was feeling like, you know what? We're back in the driver's seat. Kenny's basically got his lab coat on, and he's ready to go do business again. Like, this is the Kenny of old, sitting there wheeling, dealing, getting guys in here. Instead, he's sitting there trading guys away for picks, which is something that's a little bit totally different than what most times as a Red Wing fan we've experienced. Usually you're giving out the picks to get some high-priced names in here. But hey, I was like, all right, cool. Kenny's going in the right direction. This is going to be great. And then he turns around and basically he pisses in my Cheerios. He trades Vanek for nothing, for a third-round pick, with the condition that it might become Phoenix's third-round pick. If you're going to put a condition on it, put a second-round condition on it to where that pick jumps to a second round to help you out. Come on. And you know what? Kenny's got at least another year in his contract, and I don't know if Chris is going to blow him out before his contract expires. It just, everything good that was kind of going for the Wings. I was so excited. I was anticipating Wednesday afternoon so very much.
Really?
And then
You thought maybe, just maybe, we could actually get the scenario in which we want. We got a player, we got an asset, and so that's why when everyone talks about trading Reggie Jackson, trading Andre Drummond from the Pistons, we all assume that, hey, they're going to have some value. And hey, you got to remember, these other GMs are trying to they're not going to just be willing to give you what you want. So their job is to go out there and make moves in their best interest. And so unfortunately, we feel like we sit here today and we feel like, oh boy, the Wings did not get as much value as possible for Vanek. But the real question is, and I think we got to really delve into it, is Kenny Holland going to be using these picks, these plethora of third-round picks, and these picks in the next couple years? Is he going to actually go out there and get players that are going to produce? Because if you're trying to go out there and evaluate talent, and you're getting a guy for Vanek, and you're going to already put him back in Grand Rapids, you look at what Jeff Blashill's doing with the talent that he has. A lot of players have regressed. What on earth are you going to get for these guys? Because the Wings haven't been known to, make draft picks and then bring them right up. So we're talking about getting 10 draft picks. And these are going to be young cats between the ages of 18 and 22. The Wings haven't been known to, sprinkle in an entire rotation of 20 guys on your roster and make them all young guys. So that means you're going to, draft these guys next year and the year after. And so we're talking about potentially not seeing the fruits of this trade, the fruits of the Vanek trade until potentially 2022.
Exactly.
2022. Exactly. We'll sit here and we'll talk about,
and that's
remember that Vanek trade?
And that's if Kenny hits. Generally, if you go back and you look at drafts, most general managers only hit on probably anywhere from 25 to maybe 35% of their draft picks. The Detroit Red Wings have usually done better than the average. Usually they're closer to 40 to maybe 47% on their draft picks of either getting some type of talent out that can make a contribution to the Red Wings roster or being able to flip those guys for something else that makes an impact on the roster. At this point, I think Kenny's kind of losing it, and look, I don't feel real confident that he's going to be able to sit there and be able to take these 10 draft picks and turn around and give me 4 guys who are going to sit there and make an immediate impact on this roster, or give me 4 guys that in 2-3 years are going to make an immediate impact on this roster. At this point, I'm not confident about it. I think Ken Holland it's just the game has kind of passed him by. It's something that a lot of wrestling fans talk about with Vince McMahon. He's a little bit out of touch with what's going on right now. The NHL has evolved so much so that you now need to sit there and you got to look at guys a little bit differently. And you need guys with speed. You need guys with hands. You need guys who can sit there and play responsible on defense. But if that means you've got to sacrifice a little defense to get some offense because the game is so much more high scoring now, that's something that you're going to have to do. Unless you're sitting there and you're rolling out all-star defensemen like you used to do back in 96, 97, through the 2000s, all the way up until 2009, where you could sit there and you could look on your blue line and you've got 4 or 5 guys who are potential Hall of Famers. You're going to have to sit there. You're going to have to invest in a good goaltender. You're going to have to sit there and move some assets around to get some scoring. Guys who can get dirty, gritty goals. Guys who can win battles down in corners. Guys who can sit there and take a shot from the point and basically hit a saucer in the corner of the net. That's what you got to start doing. And I just don't know if Ken Holland has the wherewithal to be able to do that. Do you realize, looking at what they have in their minor league system, I'm going to give you a couple names, and these are the best guys that they have. Anthony Mantha is probably the highest rated player, okay? Highest rated player, Anthony Mantha. You have already seen what he can do. He's solid. He's good. I don't think he's necessarily going to be. He's not the next Gretzky. Let's leave it at that. He's not Sidney Crosby. He's not going to be. He's going to be a very good player. That's it. You've got Yevgeny Shinenkov. He's another high. He's very high on their radar. He's a solid left winger. He looks like he could sit there and translate to some success. Andres Athanasiou, you see what he brings. He's a little bit of a defensive liability, but he's got some wheels. He can score in and around the net. After that, Xavier Ouellette's probably your best defenseman. And Xavier Ouellette generally is a healthy scratch. Moving forward, because the Smith trade, he'll get more ice time, but generally Xavier Ouellette is a healthy scratch on this team. Ryan Sproul, he's somewhere in the middle for defenseman, and then you got Nick Jensen, who's at the bottom. And it just, that's where this team's at right now. That's where they're at. And then this all kind of shoots back to Ken Holland being able to make that call on draft day. And yeah, I know it's hard to sit there and pull guys who are absolute studs when you're drafting between 20 to 30. I get it. It's the margin for error is much slimmer down there than it is at the top. But geez Louise, come on. You got nothing in your minor league system at this point. All these guys, your top prospects in your minor league system, 75% of them are on your roster right now. 80% of them are on your roster right now. There's only one guy in your minor leagues right now who's not on this roster. And that guy's playing in the OHL. It's just...
Sad times, man, because you realize that timing is everything in life, right? You knew that you were building a new arena. Okay, so you're going to build a new arena and basically tell everybody, we're just going to cash in on this place being brand new and have everybody come in. I'm thinking that might only last, 20 games? Because if you have a squad that isn't that good, then how are you going to justify charging everybody those prices to go see that team? And we're looking at right now a situation where we might not make the postseason in 2016, 2017. We might not make the postseason in 2017, 2018. We might be sitting here really talking about a Red Wing team that doesn't make the postseason for the next 2 to 3 years based upon what we're looking at here. Who's going to score the puck for this team right now, the remaining games? Okay, so we all said sell, but oh my gosh, how hard is it going to be to watch Red Wing hockey now for the foreseeable future? How patient are you going to be? I know for me, not being the biggest hockey fan, I want to see the team going in the right direction. So now, instead of selling maybe 3 years ago and starting this process now, moving into a new arena and having the players that you are potentially going to be rolling with going into a new arena, maybe getting back to the postseason, heck, I would say that they bungled this deconstruction. They bungled it by 2 or 3 seasons, just getting to the first round, trying their absolute best to get to the postseason, going for, 23, 24, 25 straight years. It didn't mean anything. You basically bungled the deconstruction of the Detroit Red Wings, and now we're not going to be looking at success for the better part of 3 or 4 years. I can't be patient with that, and it's just now the sign of the times with these Detroit organizations in that when we think about how they should deconstruct, they're not doing it in ways that many are going, oh, great job. You started off the process well, but to get your best player on this team damn near scoring 40 points and 15 goals on your team, that's what you get for them. It's unfortunate, and it doesn't leave us sitting here as fans of the Red Wings and podcasters reporting on it. It's just not something that leaves me feeling positive. I feel kind of gross right now talking about it.
Here's the thing. I think after the initial shock of all of this wears off, I'll be a little bit more patient because I realize what they're up against and I realize how they have to do it. As long as you don't become Toronto, I'll be all right, where you've got basically 10 straight seasons of basically drafting in the top 5 and basically missing all the way up into the last 2 or 3 years where you've actually hit and now you're starting to see some fruits of that labor. I mean, Mitch Marner's a beast, right? Matthews is a stud, and they've got some other pieces over there that are decent for Toronto. But all those guys didn't sit there and basically show up until like the last 3 seasons. So as long as the Wings aren't going to be Toronto where you've got like a 10-year hiatus where you're just the butt end of the NHL jokes, I'll be okay with it. But honestly, I don't feel very good looking at what they have in their minor league system, knowing that Ken Holland still has control and still has the reins of this team, because I feel like he's missed on a lot. He's missed on free agents. He's missed on draft picks. He sits there and he's stubborn and he won't change his ways. He feels like he has to keep going in the same absolute direction. And I just don't understand why you can't take a step back, see what other people are doing around the league. And again, the more and more I look at what goes on with this organization and what goes on with other organizations like the Dallas Stars, the Tampa Bay Lightning, other organizations that high-ranking officials from Detroit have gone to, and you sit there and you see the pieces that they pick up that are available, you begin to realize who they wanted on this team and why those players were drafted, because they had the say. You know, if you look at Dallas, there's about 3 or 4 guys that either were on Dallas's team or are on Dallas's team that were former Red Wings. And that's all Jim Nill. That's all Jim Nill making that call. You look at what goes on in Tampa Bay. You know, you got a guy like Filppula over there, right? Filppula was kind of always at odds with Babcock, could never really figure out his role, and he was a solid center, but for some reason he could never stay on the ice. It was always something. He goes to Tampa, and the guy plays an admirable role. He's a solid second line center. He does a good job for them, wins key faceoffs, sets guys up. He might not score as much as you like, but he's out there. He's a positive force on the ice. And you just see who these other general managers, why those players were drafted here in Detroit. And then they never stuck. Because once those guys left to go take over their own things, Kenny, I don't think, understands what's going on or has a full grasp on what it is for these players and kind of how they contribute on the ice. There's holes up and down this roster everywhere you turn, everywhere you look, and I've got to point the finger of blame at somebody, right? So I'm going to point it at Ken Holland, because Jimmy Devellano's not here anymore. Jim Nill's not here anymore. Steve Yzerman's not here anymore. And there's a ton of other guys who aren't here anymore who were instrumental in helping this team win Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup, be in the playoffs year after year, and make runs. And now at this point, I feel like when draft time comes around, they swing and they miss. I feel like the guys in their minor leagues are either being stalemated down there and they can't sit there and break through that glass ceiling, or Ken Holland just doesn't understand what is going on. And it's frustrating as a fan.
You said it. I don't think we can express any more frustration with the Red Wings. I think now we got to sit back and see how the remainder of this season is going to play out. It's going to be tough times ahead for the Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunately, cuz that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a situation where they're deconstructing, and now we're all left to wonder and speculate, what is Kenny Holland going to do with these picks? What is the new philosophy going to be? And then now we got to kind of maybe wonder, what is Chris Ilitch thinking of all this? Is he on board with Ken Holland? Is it something where Ken Holland has the back of the organization and wonders, okay, if I got management side, if I'm in good favor with everybody, then I have the opportunity to go out there and rebuild this team. But I think a lot of people don't believe that he's the man for the job. Stay with us. We're going to take our first time out. We're going to come back with the Doc and Jock Wrestling Report, a round of Jock Jams, and then to finish the podcast, we got to talk about the Detroit Tigers. Early issues in spring training, we got to look at them. Stay with us on the Doc and Jock podcast on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support and allowing us to keep the studio lights on, the microphones hot here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you like what you're listening to, you like the variety of podcasts that you hear, definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's the easiest way to support us. You get all the news from the network. You can check out the work from Vito, myself, all the guys that are putting out great content almost each and every day. And hey, if you're prone to shop online, click through that Amazon banner, go about your business, shop, and then when you're on that Amazon page, just bookmark it. Anytime at all that you make an online purchase, it kicks us back a little something and helps us keep this project going. We've been going strong since 2013. And that's been largely due to the support of our supporters, and we greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Welcome back, everybody. Gotta talk about wrestling. But beforehand, I want to thank everybody for downloading, finding our podcast across the various platforms, whether it be Podomatic, Stitcher, iTunes. We're not having any technical difficulties. I guess Amazon had some issues early in the week, and I guess SoundCloud is tied to it, and a lot of podcasts go on SoundCloud. Well, hey, we've been doing this since 2013. very, very few technical issues because we put in the time. We want to deliver the content daily, and I don't think we've publicly admitted to having any technical problems on our podcast. So if you're interested in daily Detroit sports content, not too much political stuff, not too many things outside of the world of sports, hey, find it here, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. I think a lot more people are finding out about us, and a lot of great things happening for the network. So stick with us. Great things happening for the project, and we thank you for the support. All we ask, go to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Because what a week so far in wrestling. Every single week, it's great to talk about it because I know you and I are watching, and we get a chance to check out what's going to be upcoming for the Fastlane pay-per-view this Sunday, what's going down with WrestleMania, Raw versus SmackDown, interesting storylines. But where do you want to kick this off? Because there were so many things. What was your, I guess, A-plus topic of the week?
I think if we go kind of chronologically with everything, because there was
Monday Night Raw, hit me up.
There was a lot of good stuff, and I thought probably the best thing to come out of Monday Night Raw was the Seth Rollins interview that then became a stare down with Triple H, and you had Samoa Joe lurking in the background. And I thought this was exceptional. I was sitting there on the couch watching it, and I was like, I looked at the wife, and I was like, this is good. Like, this is real good. And like, Seth showed a lot of emotion talking about how he's not going to be able to make WrestleMania again. This is the second year missing. And they've been building the storyline with him going against Triple H now. This is basically the second year of them building it, trying to get to WrestleMania so they can finally have it all undone. And it just, as Seth is sitting there talking to Graves and is basically telling him, he's like, hey, are you going to be able to make WrestleMania? And he's like, doctors haven't cleared me. Doesn't look good. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. Boom.
It's time to play the game. Time to play the game!
Triple H's music hits. And Triple H comes down to the ring. He's smiling. He's laughing. And then he cuts just a hard promo on Seth Rollins, which was awesome.
And there's something about a superstar, man. When you get to the point now when you're a part-timer like Triple H, when you hear his music and he comes out, it has more meaning. I was telling Andrea, I'm like, dude, he worked hard 20 years as a wrestler, from all the awful gimmicks that he had as the French dude, silhouetting and pirouetting, to Triple H, to Hunter Hearst Helmsley. But the game persona.
You didn't like the Paul Levesque character in WCW?
No, that was ridiculous. But for him now to come out, and when he comes out, it has more meaning, the game, the music. And when he came out, I was like, dude, you could sense that wrestling royalty is walking out. He's one of those top 5 guys of all time. And being that he's now in his mid to late 40s, he's only working like the WrestleMania circuit, which is sweet. So he gets a chance to introduce himself to a couple guys and work a couple angles. And the Triple H versus Seth Rollins feud, whenever it kicks off, whenever it's going to go down, is going to be awesome, because Triple H can tell a story. He can still wrestle pretty good, but that promo, what makes it awesome for me is when you stop looking at the guy and start looking at the persona. He can, get you in. He can make you really care about what he's doing. And for me, I think the thing that we're starting to notice, you and I, is when wrestlers cut really good promos, we know. Because a lot of things are written, they're canned, and like guys like Kevin Owens maybe go a little bit off script. Guys like Seth Rollins now, what they do is they don't let you go off script until you've been established. And a lot of times these promos come off as terrible. The wrestlers are falling over their words, trying to memorize their lines. I don't like that. Just go out there, be an extension of who you are, and let it rip. And Seth was able to do that. It was awesome.
A prime example is Roman Reigns. Everything he says seems very stiff.
Oh, it's horrible.
Very, very flat. It's like he sits there and he pushes the wrong part of whatever the promo is. and you're right. Triple H comes out, and I'm watching this, and I'm just watching Triple H verbally undress Seth Rollins. And I'm just like, man, it's such, like, he's just cutting into him. And you're right, it gets you sucked in. And then all of a sudden, he points out Samoa Joe, who I have no idea how he materialized in the background. But he shows up on the other end of the ring. And now you got Seth Rollins in a real awkward, precarious position, because he's got the guy who he wants so bad right in front of him. He's got the guy who has basically now sidelined him and helped tear his MCL right behind him, just lurking. And it was so well crafted, so well done, and just exceptional. No wrestling took place, just promos, just talking.
Now, I want to tell you about somebody that they're pushing that I think I'm starting to have a beef with based upon his in-ring work. They pushed Samoa Joe to be this destroyer, and I'm kind of viewing him as like a Taz ripoff. I see him. I like what they've done. They've made him be a monster, okay? But one single thing he does really destroys that whole monster. His punches are awful. Like when he throws that jab, it looks so terrible.
Throws Dean Ambrose-sized punches.
I don't know what that is that he's doing, but that move needs to be eliminated because when he comes out there, he gets all aggressive, then he throws this like quick jab, and it looks stupid. When you see it now, after you listen to this, watch how he jabs. It's not believable. He needs to throw an overhand right. Stop throwing that little mid-range jab to the guy's gut. It looks stupid. I know you're trying to stomp to make it have more effect, but you're the destroyer. He needs to have more impactful moves. And it's just hard because of his stature. He's more frumpy. You know, a guy like Braun Strowman is the destroyer. So a guy like Samoa Joe, I like where they're going with it with Sami Zayn. It just seems like, depending on his stature, it's just not fitting exactly with his moveset. So I like the character of the destroyer. I like what they've done, seasoning him 2 years in NXT. He knows what he's doing. He's a seasoned veteran, but I just think that he needs a little bit more of an advanced moveset to make it more believable.
Is this your first experience with Samoa Joe?
No, I watched him throughout NXT, and I saw his feuds in TNA. I thought
so you didn't see him in TNA.
Yeah,
okay.
He's a beast. He's a solid wrestler.
Yeah. When he was
but in WWE, it's another level.
It is.
You got to take it because the guys are like massive.
Yeah.
So he looks like a Taz ripoff.
When he was in TNA, I thought he did some of his best work. Early TNA, like not before TNA. When TNA first had the 6-sided ring, before they went to the 4-sided ring, and then they went back to the 6-sided ring. Like early TNA, I thought he was exceptional. He was one of those guys. Him and AJ Styles, they were the draw. They were awesome. They worked so well together. In and out of the ring, it was great. And you're right. His punch is kind of weak, but overall, this is my thing. This is why I can't see I can't see Seth Rollins beating Samoa Joe. I can't see anybody beating Samoa Joe right now. You're building a destroyer. You can't have this guy sit there and falter a month into his Raw debut. So Samoa Joe's got to get hot, stay white hot, and basically has to ride this. I'm going to destroy you all the way, pretty much almost till SummerSlam. If he loses at SummerSlam, I'm cool with it. But up until then, I can't see him take an L. I can't, not at all. Speaking of guys who don't take L's, did you see the Cena, Nikki Bella, Miz, Maurice showdown?
Great way to kick off SmackDown.
Dude.
Best way, prime to do it. Miz TV. I like when wrestlers do that, a la Roddy Piper, Piper's Pit, when they have these segments. Chris Jericho does a great one. Dean Ambrose with the Ambrose Asylum was pretty cool. It's an easy way to set up rivalries, to have the guys interview, talk trash. And I think Miz TV ranks up there as one of the better wrestling run talk shows kind of thing. So it was really cool. And for me, I like the nature of how John Cena cuts into the guys. But the drawback for me is it's John Cena. I know at this point in his career, maybe he's starting to transition to elevate other guys, but I don't think it's the Miz right now that needs to be elevated. I mean, when you look at a potential John Cena, Nikki Bella versus Miz and Maurice at WrestleMania, it doesn't hit home to me as the spot where John Cena needs to be. This is a Hall of Famer. This is a guy that needs to be feuding with Triple H, the likes of The Undertaker, the likes of the top guys in all the company.
And Cena pointed that out because that was the rumor and that was the speculation. It was supposed to be Cena Undertaker. This is supposed to be Undertaker's last WrestleMania. It's supposed to be the passing of the torch. And Cena is supposed to get the torch passed to him because he's basically held the company up now for a decade or so. So then after Cena will then pass the torch to somebody else. And that's the way it should go down. But as this promo session was going on, I thought what The Miz was doing was exceptional.
He's very good.
It
underrated.
was exceptional the way he was lacing into Cena. Cena did a great job cutting back into him. And Cena sat there and basically spit razor blades at him.
Sold out. You sold out. You sold out.
This is the best part. So Cena comes out and I'd say probably 60 to 70% of the crowd is cheering for Cena. And then Miz starts into his promo. And there was a point there where I'm sitting there and I've got a couple buddies that we have like a group message where while wrestling is going on, we'll text back and forth between each other. And this is what I said to them. I said, it's so good. Almost a shoot. And for those who don't know, a shoot is like real life. Like the things that Miz was saying There were bits of truth in all of it, which was exceptional because SmackDown does this great job of weaving real life things into their promos, into their scripts, and into the wrestling that they do. And I was like, this is probably one of the best promos I've ever seen Miz do. Miz sat there and cut his promo so well, he flipped the crowd. And like you said, the crowd then started chanting, "You sold out to John Cena." It was great to see the reaction of the crowd go from being a mostly pro-Cena crowd to being a mostly anti-Cena crowd. It was outstanding. And then it was like the passing of the baton. So Miz cuts his, hands it off to John Cena, and John Cena is one of the best. He's right up there with The Rock. He's right up there with Stone Cold. Right up there with those guys who can sit there, take a microphone, and just entertain you for 15 minutes just talking about whatever.
So does the Miz have to get over? I mean, does John Cena have to put over the Miz in this match? I mean, I think it's one of those things where Cena's established. If you're going to have these guys go at it, you got to put over the Miz. Because dude has been wrestling for damn near a decade, doesn't get hurt. He's good on the mic. He draws emotion. He's a good worker. He had one
good heel.
One main event run, and he had a situation where he was the world champion. I think he's in the conversation to have good matches. I think his feuds over the better part of the last 6 months have been really good. So I think John Cena's got to do the job and put over the Miz. If you're going to set this up, if this is the matchup, Miz has to win at WrestleMania.
Well, here's the thing. John Cena's going away after WrestleMania for an extended time as he's working on, I think, 3 different movies. So it would make sense for the Miz to get put over. Here's the thing, though. A lot of speculation, a lot of rumor that John Cena will propose to Nikki Bella at the end of this match.
Oh God!
And what happens is you've seen the ongoing drama building with Nikki Bella and Maurice. Maurice steps in, slaps John Cena. Next thing you know, Nikki Bella comes running out of the back, and Nikki Bella cut. She only had basically 2 lines to say, but it was outstanding. Her 2 lines. She says, "Hold on here," because I sat there and I basically tweeted that, "I'm gonna break you, bitch."
Yeah,
you hear me? That was straight fire, dude.
Good stuff.
Straight fire. On top of that, she's smoking hot, right? Like, I could sit there and I could watch her and John Cena just go at it. No clothes, naked, all oiled up. It would be outstanding. And I could sit there, put that on Pornhub, and just watch all day.
Talk about breaking the internet. Now, before we talk about AJ Styles, Luke Harper, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, we'll talk about that, the other hot storylines from SmackDown. Your thoughts on Beth Phoenix being inducted into the Hall of Fame? Now, that whole Glamazon era with like Kelly, Beth Phoenix, that whole era was a time when I wasn't watching wrestling. So when I saw the promo that they did for her, I was like, oh, dude, she's pretty good. Watching her work reminds me of Natalya, basically the look, the kind of muscular nature of their build. It wasn't a time when I was really watching wrestling, maybe in the early 2000s, but your thoughts on Beth Phoenix? I'm like, okay, cool. I like the overall Hall of Fame class. I think it's one where that Friday night I'm going to sit and watch all 4 hours of it. But with Beth Phoenix, it's one of those ones where maybe that situation when they introduce her, bathroom break.
I gotcha. And I'm kind of like, when I was like, oh, okay, Beth Phoenix is going to get inducted. I was like, okay, all right, whatever.
You got to have a female, might as well be her.
Right. It was one of those things where I'm not opposed to it, but I was like, okay, whatever. It could have been anybody at this point. You could have put a sock or a cardboard box in, and I'd been like, okay, no big deal. But as they were sitting there showing her promo, you tend to forget how she was introduced and then what she did after she was introduced in her legacy of work. And I was like, kind of like you were. Not necessarily awe-inspired, but wow, okay, yeah, makes sense. I get it. It's all good. I understand. There is, I think, a little bit of... There's something more to Beth Phoenix going in. And this has to do with WWE. They want to do more work with Edge. And I think that by introducing Beth Phoenix into the Hall of Fame, it allows them that conduit to be like, hey, Edge. So now your wife, because for those who don't know, Edge and Beth Phoenix are married. They have kids. This is their way to sit there and say, hey, we want to do some more work with you. Edge and Christian have a show. They want to do more stuff with Edge. They want Edge to be a reoccurring character on either Raw or SmackDown. Maybe a general manager, commissioner-esque role. Not really sure. Mick Foley is going to be taking a sabbatical here very shortly. It might be at the hands of Braun Strowman because he's got to have hip surgery. So he's going to be going away for quite some time, and they've basically been alluding to this through basically every Raw, every single week, like, oh, I'm not long for this job. So that is kind of inching ever more closely. Some good news, though, and maybe some news that I'm not really sure how you feel about this, but somebody who may be coming back to the company, actually 2 people who may be coming back to the company, the Hardy Boys are leaving TNA. Their contracts are basically done as of today. And there's a lot of rumor, a lot of speculation on where they're going to head next. It appears, a little background story, it appears TNA totally botched the contract signing with the Hardy Boys. The Hardys wanted more control creatively for their character. If you've been watching any TNA or if you've watched anything on the internet, you know the Broken Hardys, the whole thing with Brother Nero and Broken Matt. They're doing this whole thing of this whole challenge of gold, and they're going around to different promotions battling for tag team championships, and they're basically hoarding all the belts. And this has been going on, and this whole thing started before TNA got into their last bit of financial trouble, where Billy Corgan and John Gabork were like, yeah, hey, you want to go do stuff? Go ahead, do whatever you want. Well, after Anthem came in, basically bought out Dixie Carter, there was a whole regime change. And for those of you who don't know, Anthem is the company that owns the Fight Network. So if you have that app and you watch a lot of different UFC stuff, a lot of different wrestling things, it's all on the Fight Network, all owned by Anthem. Anthem says, well, we're kind of doing some different things now. Jeff Jarrett's back in charge at TNA. He brought in Dutch Mantell. Dutch Mantell is now running creative for TNA. And they don't want the Hardy Boys to have straight control because Jeff Jarrett wants to go back to a more old-style wrestling, doesn't want to do these noir videos that the Hardy Boys have been doing with the broken characters. So, no, you can't have creative control. And the Hardy Boys make a huge profit doing the indie circuit. So when they're not filming for TNA, they're on the indie scene. And that's how they were able to do this whole rush for gold where they're going around fighting at all these different wrestling organizations in trying to win the tag team championships, because they've already have deals set up with these guys where they show up and they do these indie shows. So TNA says, we want 30% of whatever you bring in off your indies. And
Sure.
Basically, Matt's lawyer was like, you'd be stupid to give that to them. You're out there breaking your neck and they want to take 30% of your money. Tell them to go fly a kite. So now the Hardy Boys are left basically without a home, and WWE's been calling. It looks like they may be coming back to WWE.
Maybe WrestleMania would be a nice time to bring them back, because the tag team divisions on both SmackDown and Raw need a little bit of an infusion, because they have talent, but they're not utilizing them well at all. I mean, the tag team division on both shows definitely needs an infusion, and what a way. What show do you think would be better for them? I would say Raw would be great. You have them feud with Gallows and Anderson, the New Day potentially. You have a lot of great feuds, and you could continue to just basically highlight American Alpha and maybe one day have them come over to Raw, because the tag team division is even worse on SmackDown. When you put out there, that those tag teams, they're terrible. I mean, just...
You don't like the Usos?
No.
You don't like the Ascension?
I don't like the Ascension. I don't like that at all.
I don't like it either. This is something I've thought about, and this is a little bit off topic, spinning off of where you're at. How would you feel if WWE and SmackDown did something like this? You have your champions, right? And that's fine, no big deal. But if you were to put all of the tag teams on one show and all of the female wrestlers on another show, that way you strengthen both rosters and you can allot more time. I think if you did the tag teams maybe on Raw, you did the tag teams on Raw, you maybe did the women on SmackDown. I think you strengthen the rosters on
Great
SmackDown
idea. Yep.
and you strengthen the roster on Raw, and you've got your own separate titles there.
Great idea. No doubt about it. And something needs to be done, because tag team wrestling is great and a lot of people enjoy it, but when you don't feature it correctly, it becomes a situation where nobody's going to be invested. It's one of those things where certain points in the show, you just get up and stop watching or go click around. So the tag team division definitely needs to be redone. And a very good point. Now, speaking of SmackDown and the highlights of that show, AJ Styles, Luke Harper. Of course, I'm a huge AJ Styles guy, but when you look at it, the way you built up Luke Harper and then you have him lose to the big time guys, it's kind of a waste with him, but unfortunately somebody has to take the hit. And if you're going to feature somebody from that match, it's got to be AJ Styles. You got to have him go up against Bray Wyatt, because they're going to put on a great match at WrestleMania, should that be the road they go down. But for a guy like Luke Harper, you want him to continue to elevate, because he does elicit emotion. He gets you involved in the match. It was a good match. Of course, with the whole controversy, I'm always of the opinion, just, hey, have him wrestle clean 1, 2, 3 in that kind of matchup. But to have Luke Harper, get pinned, but then to have his foot on the ropes, then Shane McMahon comes out. I don't need all that. AJ Styles and Luke Harper can go out there and tell a story just fine without all that extraness. But they did it. AJ Styles won the match. I'm very happy. I can't wait to see that matchup.
Like you said, somebody's got to take the fall here. I like what they're doing with Luke Harper. His promos are getting better every week. He looks much more comfortable on the mic and on screen when he's cutting them. His in-ring work is getting much, much better. And you're right. You don't need all this ancillary
stuff
BS
with it. Yeah,
you don't need the foot on the rope. You don't need, both feet touch the outside of the ring at the same time, so it's a tie. You don't need all this stuff. Just let them tell their story in the ring. Let them wrestle. And it does kind of suck because right now you've got Luke Harper, who seems to be elevating himself up to that level with a guy like AJ Styles. Now, AJ Styles has the unique ability because he's so good, he's so talented, that he could basically make a mop look good in the ring. He can sit there and basically wrestle anybody and make you look like an absolute stud. So I'm not sure how much of this is actually Luke Harper or how much of this is AJ Styles making Luke Harper look this good. Either way, I like it. I like where Luke Harper's headed, and you're right. Somebody's got to take the fall here. You hate to see Luke Harper take the loss, but AJ Styles needs his WrestleMania moment. So now you put AJ Styles versus Bray Wyatt in WrestleMania. This gets a little clouded, though, because a few weeks ago we were talking, what's going to happen with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt? And I told you then, at that time, I don't think Randy Orton is going to just roll over for Bray Wyatt and not fight him. You don't just give up WrestleMania moments. You just don't do it. So on SmackDown at the end, you've seen basically Randy Orton burn down the Wyatt establishment.
Sister Abigail, no!
Set everything on fire. And Bray Wyatt looks to lose his mind as they basically faded to black. So now do you have a three-way match? You have AJ Styles, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt?
I would not do that.
I wouldn't do it either. And I think it would be a horrible idea if you did it.
Dumb idea. I think that WWE is thinking that, okay, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton is a long-term thing, maybe down the road for SummerSlam. Keep that going. Maybe what you do is you have Randy Orton inject himself into that match. A great matchup, AJ Styles, back and forth. Maybe you have a situation where Bray Wyatt hits his finishing move, the Sister Abigail, on AJ Styles, gets the thing, boom, Randy Orton comes out, causes some interference.
Crazy RKO out of nowhere.
Crazy RKO out of nowhere. AJ Styles wins it, gets the belt back, and now you establish AJ Styles, have his WrestleMania moment, and then you really heat up the feud between Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. So that's the best way to do it.
And then to double back, you could have Luke Harper come in and have a whole thing with AJ Styles because they've had really good matches the last couple. So a way to kind of put a bow on everything. I think you're right on here, and I like where your thinking is, and I like the road that you're headed down. I think that would be outstanding because now you basically take care of 4 of your main guys on the roster. And you got to remember, John Cena's not going to be here for a while now. So these are the 4 who are going to carry it and are going to be the main draw. And I like that. I think that's a good idea. And I like where you're headed there.
But for next year, what they got to do is they got to do some interpromotional type stuff because you would have a great matchups if you would have maybe AJ Styles versus Sami Zayn. You could do some cross-promotional type stuff and have some really solid matchups, but they're sticking to the brands. And for me, I think you could do a lot more on the big events where you just have a couple guys. Hey, Sami Zayn's going out there, going off, or, you have Samoa Joe going off on AJ Styles, calling him, flash in the pan, and boom, his music hits and he shows up there on Raw. That makes it more fun. They haven't done a whole heck of a lot of that. They should do that. They should utilize the talent. And hey, if Samoa Joe is going to call out AJ Styles, have him come out there. That'd been sweet. That's a sweet moment.
Would you like to see, like at WrestleMania, every
Once in a
single
while.
year you have basically you have the SmackDown champion versus the Raw champion, and you have that interpromotional
Type stuff? Yeah,
the
why not?
interpromotional championship. It's not. It's
Or
a,
one storyline involving a cross-promotional.
I think it would be great.
Yeah.
I think you're right on, and it's a way to tie the brands back together instead of. Yes, we're separate entities, but there's some.
It's WrestleMania, man.
Some crossover.
You got to do some crossover. Just one main storyline. Have somebody crossover. I think people will be even more engaged. Dude, great Doc and Jock report. I can't wait for Fastlane. I'm going to sit and watch it. We'll definitely have the recap next week. Now, segueing into Jock Jams. A lot has happened in the world of sports. I got things that I definitely need to know from you and what we call Jock Jams. All right, let's give the Detroit Pistons a little bit of love and attention. Trade deadline hit, not too much was done. Everyone's looking like, okay, you probably couldn't get what you were asking for Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond. Played some good games, have played some bad ones as well. Continuing on with what they're doing this season, everyone's kind of looking at what's going on with Reggie Jackson and Ish Smith, looking at, wow, the combination of Ish Smith, Tobias Harris and Stanley Johnson is doing some things as of late. I think it was a very solid overtime win versus Portland, doing some things. But again, with the Pistons, it's the status quo, up and down. The rotations are being looked at. But in a sentinel event that occurred over the weekend that many people are looking at and talking about was the Rip Hamilton jersey retirement. And everyone's looking at it like, if you're really honest, did Rip Hamilton deserve to have his jersey retirement, not only for his body of work, but, kind of the way he left the organization wasn't really the Class A way that everyone kind of has portrayed it. Now, Tom Gores is trying to mend the fences, calling it a family, but what was your take on the Rip Hamilton jersey retirement situation?
It was kind of a blip on the radar. Like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even really watch it. I caught the highlights, and I know he basically went on like an Adam, like a 25-minute just prelude of just nonstop.
Thank you. Wow, man.
Yeah. And I honestly, it was one of those things where I'm like, so we're really gonna honor Rip Hamilton, eh? All right. So the Pistons are. I mean, at what point do we put everybody up there? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, the entire Bad Boys team. I mean, we've got Chuck Daly up there, right? And hey, I love Chuck Daly, but I don't know if you need your jersey retired. It's not like you're Greg Popovich, right? If I'm San Antonio, I'm retiring Greg Popovich, and that's what I'm doing. But like Chuck Daly, really? You won 2 championships, and yeah, I understand it was dominated by the Lakers and the Celtics, and then sandwich that with what happened with the Bulls. But you don't need to put up a coach. I mean, I don't understand what the Pistons are doing by basically honoring everybody who's ever won a championship for their organization.
Coffers, bro. Cha-ching.
Yeah, I get it, but it makes it less special. I mean, I remember when Isaiah had his jersey retired, and I got kind of choked up because I remember watching the Bad Boy Pistons, and I remember what Isaiah meant to this organization, and that was special. I remember seeing Joe D get his jersey raised, and that was special because I remember what he did for the organization, not just as a player, but he also did things as a general manager and a president for this organization. So those guys deserve it. They did numerous things for this franchise. I like Rip Hamilton. I think he's a good player.
So does this mean
but that's it. He's a good player.
Does this mean that maybe Tayshaun, Rasheed also get there next year?
They're going up. They're going up. It's a matter of win, man, because Tom Gores sees this as a money-making machine. Hey, man, we can sit there and we can raise everybody's jersey to the rafters, and why the hell not? We can sit there and we can charge a premium on these ticket prices. We'll get this thing maybe 65% sold out because they're not selling out. Hell, half the time you got like 35% in the stands there. So, yeah, he sits there, boosts what's going on that night. You sit there, you bring the old players back. They get to sit there and get all choked up on the microphone. And yeah, it's a way to make money. It's a way to sell something to your fans. And it's a way to sit there and kind of take your eyes off of what's going on with the product right now, which isn't very good. You get to reminisce about the better times when you were actually contending for championships.
All right, cuz this time of year, a lot of great things are happening in the world of sports. You got the NFL Combine. I know you're going to get excited for the Underwear Olympics.
Oh, yeah. Underwear Olympics are already starting. I'm so pumped.
March Madness. Everything's going down this month. We're going to be looking forward to doing a lot of great podcasts. But around this time is when the salary cap casualties happen in the NFL, and some big names were released. AP, Adrian Peterson, and Jamaal Charles were cut by their respective teams. Now, Adrian Peterson, I know they just didn't pick up their options. Jamaal Charles is no longer going to be on the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think an NFL squad should take a look at either guy? And if so, who do you think will bounce back? AP, repeated knee injuries. Jamaal Charles is a guy that had success, but again, was often injured and had some serious injuries to boot. I think that both guys are going to be on squads next year, but should a team take a risk on either guy?
Let's take this one layer further. Should your Lions go out and target either of these guys?
No.
And the answer is absolutely not. Here's the deal. These guys will be signed. They will be signed based purely upon just having names, right? It's Adrian Peterson. It's Jamaal Charles. These guys for years were lead fantasy backs. You can turn around. You can sell that to nitwits who sit there and support your fans and support your teams. Fans know who Adrian Peterson is. Fans know who Jamaal Charles is. And you can say, hey, look what we're doing. We're investing a lot of money into your team, and we want you to come and sell out our stadium. The smart fan knows these guys are done. These guys are absolutely done. There's no reason that any team should invest a high price in them if you want to bring them in for some type of low salary to kind of maybe balance out your backfield, because they're not premier backs anymore. They're not the number one guy. If you're going to bring them in as your number 2 or your number 3 guy, okay, sure. But both of them have knee injuries left and right. They both have missed a ton of time over the last 3 seasons. So there's no point to bring them in and sit there and give them a ton of money and expect what you used to get out of them, say 5-6 years ago, because it's not there anymore. If I'm a team like the Detroit Lions, I'm not targeting either one of these guys. There is a guy out there that I would target, and that would be I would target Latavius Murray. That would be the one guy I would sit there and go out and get. He doesn't have a lot of tread on him. He has shown that he can sit there and carry the load as the primetime back. Again, we talked about some of his faults and some of his foibles last week on the podcast. He doesn't have elusive breakaway speed. He's not that guy who can sit there and make 4 guys miss, in the open field. But he's a guy who can run between the tackles. I think if you were to pair him with a guy like an Amir Abdullah and a Theo Riddick, because neither one of those guys can stay healthy, so I think you need 2 of those backs to basically equal 1, and you pair them with a guy like a Latavius Murray, and you get him for $3 to $5 million, I think you're solid at the running back position. Otherwise, maybe I'm looking at a running back, I don't know, maybe in the 5th round with a Dixon. I know he's got some baggage, but that guy's a first-round talent that you can get in the 5th round later on in the draft, and I might do that. I'm not drafting a running back in the 1st round, even though I love Dalvin Cook.
All right, cuz. Now, unfortunately, we've definitely talked about Michigan State and some of the troubles they've had with the football program, with the alleged sexual abuse going on with a couple of the football players, who's know what, when, and where. You had Curtis Blackwell, having his phone confiscated potentially and being escorted out of a meeting. He still has yet to address the media. And prior to Mark Dantonio releasing a statement, he's kind of been mum. He's kind of closed off spring practice. Many reporters are saying he's not going to take questions, but he did release a statement earlier in the week, really discussing his extreme concern regarding the allegations and really trying to save face and things like that, and really putting it off on, we are looking at an investigation right here. So I got to follow along with that and let that play out. What was your stance when you heard the news? And do you think he's taken the appropriate stance in terms of how much he's talking about the alleged allegations?
On Mark Dantonio's statement, the guy basically came out and said absolutely nothing. Look, I understand what position he's in. He can't say a whole lot because there's an ongoing investigation. But boy, oh boy, if you are a Michigan State Spartan, if you're a Spartan fan, this is a huge black eye for you. Your football team is under duress. You just lost a player who doesn't want to play anymore. You just lost another player who basically came out and said, I made a horrible comment to a teammate and I'm now leaving the program. And now you've got 3 guys who are alleged on sexual misconduct.
Did you hear of a 4-star wide receiver decommitted?
Yeah. And now you've got
all
guys,
bad news.
You've got guys leaving the program before they even step foot on campus. So it's not good right now. Michigan State is under fire, this is incredible. If you were to sit there and go back a mere 18 months ago, this is something that I wouldn't have thought we would be dealing with at all. And I don't blame this on Mark Dantonio. I blame this on players just being stupid. Look, Marky D does a great job with that program. He has high expectations and he holds those players to it. And what you're seeing now, you have a player like was it John Rubisky? He was the one who sat there and is leaving because he made a inappropriate comment to a teammate. I mean, these are the standards that Mark Dantonio holds you to, right? You sat there, you screwed up. It's on you now. So now you get to leave. You go. You've got other players who sat there and have to take that long look in the mirror and decide, do I want to continue to play? Is my heart still in this? Do I still want to go out there and give everything I have to this team? And some guys, the answer is no. And that's okay. If that answer is no, just go ahead and leave. You don't have to stay on the team. And Mark Dantonio, I think, makes it known to these guys, look, I expect your best. I expect you to show up every single day and give yourself to this program because this program is going to give back to you. Now, you've got 3 guys who have allegedly done some wrongdoing here, some sexual misconduct, and we can't really speak to it because not a whole lot's coming out. We have no idea who these players are. We have no idea what exactly went down. We know that Curtis Blackwell somehow might have been involved in this, and again, somehow might have. We don't know. There's a whole lot we don't know.
Allegedly.
Right, exactly. So there are some things that are swirling around this football program right now that aren't good, but the fact that you've got Mark Dantonio, who's the head coach here, and you've got an athletic director who really keeps a finger and a pulse on what's going on in and around the school and with his athletic programs. I feel like Michigan State will weather the storm and will come out better for it in the long run. You're going to have to take some hits early on, though. And I think going into this football season, you may see that on the field a little bit because you've got guys decommitting before they ever step foot on campus because of all this stuff that's swirling around the football program. It'll be one of those things where, in the end, I think Mark Dantonio will do the right job. I think the athletic program and everything that surrounds it will be okay. It's just going to be one of those things that you've got to weather the storm to make it through.
All right, cuz, it's March Madness. You know what that means. Conference tournaments, NCAA bids, who's doing what. Michigan, Michigan State, Oakland have done some solid things in the regular season. I think we can put to bed the question of Michigan and Michigan State, whether they're going to be on the bubble. They're going to be in, no doubt about it. A team like Oakland probably has to win the Horizon League tournament. You know, I'm reading reports that mid-majors, again, are going to have a tough time getting a lot of teams in. So you know that the conference tournament for Oakland is really, really important coming up at the Joe Louis Arena. But of the local teams, Michigan, Michigan State, Oakland, who's had a surprising 24-win season, do you think that they're going to have success in the NCAA tournament? Which team do you think might advance the farthest?
At this point, with the way Michigan's playing, it would probably be Michigan. I mean, here's the thing. John Beilein knows what his team can do, knows where his team is weak at, and knows that, hey, our defense is getting better week by week, but there are some teams that we're just going to have to outscore. And if they go out there and they outscore those teams, they got a great shot to win. And this team has been red hot now and has been playing extremely well. They've won the last 5 out of 6 games, and they look good doing it. That being said, don't ever count Michigan State out. It is now March, and we all know what that means. It's Tom Izzo's time to shine. He sits there, and again, you go back a couple weeks ago, check out the podcast. I told you, you were sitting there, you were frantic, so frantic. You're like, oh my God, they're going to lose. They're going to lose every game. They're not making the tournament. And you know what? Fast forward a couple weeks, look at where we're at, right? Michigan State, I believe they're in it. I don't think they're on the bubble anymore. They had a huge win this past weekend, and this team looks like it's rebounding and is kind of finally coming into form. This is the one thing that Izzo ends up doing. He sits there and he beats his players down early in the year, takes his foot up off the gas, and they basically coast into the tournament. And then when they get into the tournament, it's sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes you have a Middle Tennessee that pops you, but for the most part, you sit there and this team gets rolling, has a great shot to make it to the Sweet 16. At this point right now, Michigan State, I mean, they've been hot themselves, basically winning 6 out of the last 8 games that they've played. So both these teams right now are red hot. Nobody's more hot than Oakland. Oakland looks so impressive, taking a number 1 seed into the Horizon League tournament. You know, I think all 3 teams, including Oakland, and you're right, I think Oakland, the only way they get in is by winning the Horizon League. I think all 3 teams have a great shot to sit there and make some noise, get into the tournament. If Michigan is hitting their 3-pointers, they're going to be a very tough out, and I think they'd be the toughest out to make. That being said, look, again, Michigan State, you going to count them out? No, it's March. It's Izzo. Come on.
And now I like it too. I'm hearing reports that Bridges might be willing to come back, get into that top 5 next year if he stays, because he's probably a lottery pick, but one more year of seasoning, you have some success with guys coming back. Maybe the seniors that were injured this year get redshirted another year. You come back, you have some success next year. Hey, why not be a top 3 pick if you have the opportunity instead of being a lottery pick?
Yeah, and you would have your 4 top sophomores would all be back, and they would all be expected to perform, and I would expect them to perform to a very high level. And it makes them a very dangerous team if he does come back next season. So I think all of our teams that are competing for March Madness and competing to get into the tournament, I think they all have exceptional shots. If I'm going to bet some money on somebody, I'm probably going to put it on Michigan because they've been lights out lately.
Real quick, you did a great job in Jock Jams. Only a quick thought about this because it hit the wire and it was really interesting because if you're an influencer, you can do these things. So the Bleacher Report tweeted out an airball.
You love that term, don't you?
Yeah, influencer. Maybe we're one. I don't know. But Bleacher Report tweeted out an airball and said Dirk forever. So it incensed Mark Cuban, and he went off on an email tirade. He sent out tweets saying, hey, Bleacher Report, I'm going to go handle my business if you don't take it down. Bleacher Report sent him an email and said, hey, listen, we're just, handling our business. We believe Dirk's numbers speak for himself. And Mark Cuban said, fine, if you're not going to take it down immediately, remove that tweet, I'm going to show you how I can influence the situation. So I don't know if he made a phone call and he said, hey, listen, Turner, which is the parent company of the Bleacher Report, there's going to be some reprimands if you do not have this taken down. All of a sudden, Bleacher Report takes it down. Now, on both ends, I can see it. If I was an influencer like that, I'd maybe test it out and see if I could do that. But being that I'm a Twitter provocateur as well, I've never had anybody force me to take down anything. Now, we've said, let's watch out what we're tweeting. Let's not try and offend anybody seriously. And in 3.5 years of tweeting, over 52,000 tweets with others and the stuff I put out, we haven't had a controversial tweet yet. So I'm conflicted.
I don't know about that. We've had a couple, I think.
Oh, maybe a couple.
We've had a couple that have
hit the line.
Here's the line, and we may be dancing really, really close to it.
Exactly, but nobody's come after us to threaten us, and I don't know how I would respond. What's your take on what Mark Cuban did? Did he flex his big balls? And if you maybe had the funds, would you even try and do that with people that are maybe writing some negative shit about you?
I really like Mark Cuban. I think Mark Cuban's one of the best owners in all of the NBA and all of sports. I find him to be provocative. I find him to be a lot of fun to listen to. I find his actions and his antics to be hilarious. And sometimes I think he does kind of cross over the line. And sometimes I think he should just sit down and shut up. This is one of those times where I think he needs to sit down and shut up. You're going to go after the Bleacher Report for posting a picture of Dirk missing a shot. Who cares? Who cares? The Bleacher Report's trying to be funny, and they're making a joke. And if you can't see the humor in it, and you can't see the joke in Dirk Forever, because he's having a down season, so why not poke some fun at it? To sit there and go out and flex your muscle and force a media organization to pull something down, I think is over the line, and I think it's ridiculous. That being said, I put this on Bleacher Report. Bleacher Report, you should have enough wherewithal to sit there and say, you know what, Mark? Hey, we like you. We have a really good working relationship with you. We hopefully this can continue. But look, we have our own set of standards, and this did not cross any lines, did not break any standards. We're keeping it up. Sorry if you don't like it. Go ahead and bash us, because you know what ends up happening? Mark Cuban expels so much energy to bash Bleacher Report, right? You know what that does? That gets more people clicking into Bleacher Report wondering, hey, what happened here? What's going on? Next thing you know, they're sitting there perusing, trying to figure out why the Bleacher Report is getting filleted by Mark Cuban and why he's sitting there trying to take a flamethrower to him and burn him to the ground. And at the same time, Bleacher Report, they can do? Stand up and say, hey, journalistic integrity. We are...
Because I have to disagree with you, because they can say that, but the issue is this. It's about money. But Mark Cuban said, I'm going to go to Turner, who I have a working relationship because of the NBA. And he said, when Turner's the parent company of Bleacher Report, that means that funding is going down. So Turner is responsible for some costs. So they're a financial partner with the Bleacher Report. So in essence, what that means is Mark Cuban went and said, I'm going to rip the funds that you need to run your business because you did this. And so that's what an influencer means, is that he has the ability to go right to the source, and Bleacher Report had to do it. And this is why it's dangerous, and a dangerous precedent, in that if you know the money guys, okay, now you have editorial control. Now you're doing the similar things that you're railing against the president. You're censoring an outlet. Hey, you can voice your displeasure. You can even go behind the scenes and have meetings with the Bleacher Report. But when you try to censor a media outlet, that's not a good sign, because if he does it, who's to say that maybe Martha Ford doesn't say, hey, Detroit News, take down this editorial about Matthew Stafford. Oh, you don't like it? Okay, we're going to cut your credential. Or hey, we're going to cut any advertising that you have, and that thus squeezing the media outlet. So that's been the interesting part about it to look at, is to go, oh, there is this wielding power that you have to go with. And a billionaire has it and earned it, and you have to know that going into it, is that if the Lions, if we had a relationship with them, came and did that to us, most likely we would have to bow down. You just have to. You have to play the game. You have to bow down to those that are in control. You have to.
I'm saying no.
You shut down the Bleacher Report.
If
fire 800 people.
No. If me and you are sitting there and we're going to sit there and we put something out there and we believe wholeheartedly in it, and I have somebody coming to us, some sports organization, some sports member, somebody coming to us saying, hey, you need to take that down. We don't like that. Okay, cool. I don't care. We have a right to post this, and we have a listenership and a followership that expects certain things from us. So we're going to post that because that's for our audience. We have a working partnership and a working deal with you, but we have a right to do this, and we have an obligation to our listenership and to our followership.
Fight
to
against
post
the man.
this.
Fight.
That's right.
Fight, team, fight.
And
Go at him.
And you know what? I think this goes more to I think
journalistic integrity.
not so much that, but I think this says more about mine and your personalities. And this is why this project's been great, and this is why this is a lot of fun, because I absolutely hate authority, and you sometimes
hate authority, but still respect it. Yeah.
Yes. You tend to show more respect for the authority, and sometimes your brain helps me think, but I'm just like, hey, F this, and I'm throwing up, basically pulling a Stone Cold and both fingers just ablazing, ready to burn it down myself. So I'm borrowing that flamethrower from Mark Cuban, and I'm ready to torch the establishment.
All right, great segment. Our last time out, we'll come back, quickly hit on the Tigers. There are some issues and budding problems that are arising already in spring training, just based on the early couple performances that we've watched. We'll talk about it quickly, and this podcast, episode 186, cruising along, having a good old time. Stay with us. You're listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
DocNJock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wing shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table.
All right, cuz, rolling along here on episode 186, got to touch on the Detroit Tigers. Couple things that we got to note. I know you saw the performance of Anibal Sanchez when he approached the media afterwards after getting knocked around by the Braves. Looked lost again. Shane Green, not a great first performance. Daniel Norris was not impressed with his performance. Tyler Collins out there, oof. Even Steven Moya went out there and looked like the old Steven Moya, running around in the outfield, not being able to control any ball out there. Really takes, Steven Moya makes watching the outfielders very interesting because you never know what he's going to do. But is there anybody that you're concerned about at this point in time? Is it too early? Sanchez, Green, Collins, Moya, these are guys that you really hope can maybe contribute because you have the same team. In essence, what we're asking for is the same squad. Everybody's got to step it up. And I don't think there's going to be enough guys to step it up. If you ask me who am I most concerned about, I'm looking at Daniel Norris. I want to know that he's going to be a guy that's going to earn that 4th spot. And when you have your first outing and your mechanics are off, and he knew what was going on, but when you have a performance like that, you got to make sure he locks it in. But Sanchez in that number, oh my God, he's got to step it up. These guys have to perform. And when Sanchez says, I'm not really sure what's going on, I just need to look at video, you get concerned because dude's owed $16.8 million this year.
That's where most of my nervousness lies.
Anibal
Sanchez. I mean, he pitched 1 inning. He's got an ERA of 27 runs right now. And like he said, he has no idea what's wrong. He can't figure it out.
Well, maybe a 90-mile-an-hour fastball is wrong. Look at the number, like, my radar is really bad.
when you can't figure it out and you're not sure what's going on and your velocity is down so low, you got to sit there, and if you're a pitcher, you've got to try to find something different. And he's owed a lot of money, so I think there's an obligation that this organization feels to sit there and place him in the starting rotation. And obviously, you can't roll him out every 5th day if he's going to sit there and perform like that. There's no way in hell. He's just going to sit there and give up the long ball every single time he takes the mound. And you can't afford that. Not with this team. Not with what this team is trying to do. And you're right. This team is trying to come back together, trying to figure it all out, trying to sit there and roll the same old lineup out there. But you can't put Anibal out there on the mound every 5th day and expect to get wins. It just isn't going to work because his velocity's down. His stuff's not electric like it used to be when he signed that contract. And he's owed a lot of money. And look, even if he was to come out of the bullpen, I'd still have major concerns about how he was going to be utilized. He's one of those guys that now has to be utilized in spot duty, and that's a lot of money to sit there and sink into your bullpen. You're going to put a pitcher who's making over $16 million into your bullpen, and you're only going to use him in situations. Like, you can't even call on him to come and get you out of a 6th inning jam or a 7th inning jam. You're going to call on him because you need somebody to pitch to a righty. and it's going to basically be one and done. Get him out, get off the mound. That's it, and that's where you're at. So a lot of concerns with Anibal Sanchez going forward because he still is owed $16 million this year, plus there's a $5 million buyout next year. There's a lot of money wrapped up in that dead arm.
21.8, and if somehow he does rebound, he's guaranteed $16 million next year if they extend it. They're likely not to extend Anibal Sanchez, so he's going to be on the hook for another $21.8 million. Hey, and many people said that, year 4 and 5 with Anibal, you weren't going to get value anyway, but that's a big chunk of change to not get value back, and we need him to perform. Are you still continuing to look at what's going on in center field, looking at what's going on with that? Because it looks like Matuk is getting some more opportunities to get out there. They maybe want to feature him. Collins has struggled. You look at Jacoby Jones, he's going to be featured out there too. Do you see anybody pulling ahead at this point in time?
I think the organization really likes Jacoby Jones, and I think they want Jacoby Jones to kind of seize that opportunity. He's getting quite a few at-bats there. I think Matuk's going to end up with it. I think he will be the guy who takes it. But don't be surprised if Jacoby Jones makes the opening day roster and he's a guy who gets platooned out there in center field and maybe does some work on the infield as well. He'll be one of those utility guys I think this team's going to use him as. But he's getting a lot of looks at the plate. They're giving him his opportunity. I think this organization is really high on him. They think he's an okay defender, and they really like his bat, and they like what he brings to the plate. So, again, this is like a softball lineup again this year. So you're going to see guys with big bats, and I think they're high on Jacoby Jones for that reason. Is there anybody out there that you're kind of seeing? Do you see the same thing I'm seeing, or do you think maybe Tyler Collins is going to kind of push his way in, and maybe he's the one who comes away with it?
See, situationally, you're going to probably see early on them using matchups depending on if it's a right-handed pitcher versus a left-handed pitcher. I think, my hope is that Jacoby Jones is the guy to step it up and to be the guy. Matuk has an opportunity if he can continue to, put the ball in play. I know that, the Detroit Tigers are desperate for left-handed hitters, but when I look at it, I just say that in terms of pure talent, it would seem to me that Jacoby Jones is the front runner. But when you go out there and look, you got to realize that you got to put the ball in play. So unfortunately, I guess the question we got to ask is, would you be willing to sacrifice a little bit on the defensive side in order to get, maybe Jacoby Jones' bat? Because, you can't put Moya out there in the outfield because he struggles. The defense in the outfield last year was atrocious. You had a negative WAR. You had situations where you were giving up way too many runs by missing cutoffs, not taking the right angles. You had situations where that outfield defensively was costing you runs. So for me, I would say that on the offensive side, you have enough if everybody performs with JD, with Victor Martinez, Miguel, Ian Kinsler, that maybe you would sacrifice some offense for a guy that can play well defensively, and that might not be Jacoby Jones. It might be where his strengths lie in the offensive side of things. So you might be looking at a Matuk, and a guy like Anthony Gose might slip back in the mix depending on what he can do defensively. And at this point in time for the Tigers, they need to focus on who is the best guy out there that plays defense at center field, especially at that position with a big outfield at Comerica Park. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think anybody's really pulled out ahead, but I guess the way I'd look at it is I'm going to pay attention to the defensive stats for those guys over the course of spring training.
Any way too early unsung heroes that are on your radar right now? Anybody you're looking at who, like you said, maybe performs well defensively, maybe somebody who hits a couple big shots when they're at the plate?
For me, I'm always looking at the pitchers. NJV's start has been awesome. Jordan Zimmerman's first start was acceptable. Michael Fulmer working on some things. So I'm keying in on those three guys. So far, so good. I think the Tigers will be looking heavily for those three guys to carry the team. So I'm looking more towards that because, as they usually say, the offense usually is behind the pitchers at this point in time up until probably the end of April. That's when the hitters come around. And as you know, Miguel usually starts off a little bit slow, waits a little bit of time, maybe 20, 30 games in, and then he just, look at last year. Last year, we talked about what's wrong with Miguel in April and May, and then all of a sudden, boom, June, July, August hit, and he was raking. And we're like, yeah, I guess maybe that talk was a little bit premature.
Somebody wanted to trade him, if I remember.
I think that's still the right move. I'll stand by that. I think that, hey, they're rebuilding, and what they're doing is the same thing the Wings did. They're going to rebuild. They're just going to do it on their time, not on the Doc's time.
I gotcha.
They don't want to do what the Doc says. They probably would be more successful if they were, but hey, it is what it is.
I'm watching two guys. James McCann, I think he's going to rebound. He had an injury-plagued season last year. If you remember what was his rookie year, he was exceptional, right? The guy is great defensively behind the plate. I think his batting average, I'm expecting that to come up from what it was last year. I think he's going to provide some timely hits. On top of it, I like the way he runs, like you said, the pitchers. He runs the pitching rotation very well. Everybody's confident with him behind the plate. So I'm expecting McCann to have a big rebound year. And in center field, I'm expecting Mikey Matuk to take it over. I think the fans are going to like him. And I think a lot of it's going to be due to his defense. I think he's going to sit there and he's going to command the field. He's going to run hard out there. I think he's going to come up with some really big plays. What's going to be interesting is to see if his bat responds at the plate and kind of how he performs there. If his bat can come around and he can sit there and he can hit 250, 260, 275, and he can play really, really well in the outfield, I think the fans are going to love him, and I think it's going to be a huge signing for this team.
Great podcast, sir. Turn on the lights, turn on the microphones. Here in the Sterling Heights office, 90 minutes just flies by, man. Good stuff. 90 good minutes, man.
Who knew they could talk this much?
Who knew?
I don't know.
Who? Yes, sir. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Stay with us as we continue to trek towards episode 200. Good things ahead. Great stuff, sir.
Thank you, sir. Go Tigers.
This was locker room talk.
Second deck.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me. They tell me things that I will do. They show me things I'll do. They talk to me.